Happy New Year and welcome to First Take. I am Evan Cohen, and with me I have Super Bowl winner Jason McCourty, Anscape senior writer and award-winning author David Dennis Jr., and former NFL front office executive Mike Tannenbaum. We will have Joey Galloway joining us in a bit to talk about the bowl games, but let's start with the NFL. Joe Burrow is having a great year, despite the Bengals' 8-8 record. Coming into the season with high expectations, Burrow has shown up for Cincy, ranking first in the league in passing yards and touchdowns, and has made some believe he actually has a case for the MVP this season. They'll need some help, though. But thanks to their win over Denver last week, the Bengals kept their playoff hopes alive. They must beat the Steelers Saturday, have the Broncos lose to Kansas City, and the Dolphins lose or tie against the Jets in order to get the 7th seed. Jason, if the Bengals miss the playoffs, should we consider this season a failure for Joe Burrow?
No, I don't think so. And a failure for the Cincinnati Bengals, yes, for their ability to put a team surrounding Joe Burrow so that they can go out there and compete for a Super Bowl, yes. But you look at what Joe Burrow has been able to do. The fact that they're in the playoffs, a contention and conversation in Week 18 says a ton about what he's been able to do. He is only third to Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers when it comes to passing yards, touchdowns, and interception ratio. So I look at this is going to go down as one of the best seasons historically for a NFL quarterback. I don't think it's a disappointment because you can score 30 points a game and your defense can't stop anybody. I think we should be giving Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and these guys on the offensive side of the ball a ton of credit. My only knock for Joe Burrow is the fact that you have to start fast. This is a team that year after year, they come out the gates and they lose to a team like the New England Patriots in Week 1 where they only put up 10 points. That is my only thing that I would say that was the failure part of it, because if they won that game, we're talking and having a different conversation. Here we are in Week 18. But Joe Burrow has just been absolutely fantastic. The fact that we're mentioning his name, that if they get in the playoffs, he's an MVP candidate, MVP type of season at 9 wins, just goes to show how great this season was.
Do we not consider him an elite quarterback, though?
Yeah, of course he's an elite quarterback.
Sure.
And bad seasons happen to elite quarterbacks all the time.
But they make the playoffs.
But no, not necessarily. Because I lived in New Orleans. I watched every snap that Drew Brees had with the Saints. This is a Drew Brees season. Drew Brees only had 4 times in 11 seasons where those Saints teams had a better than 25th ranked defense,
wow.
right? This happens a lot. His season reminds me of Drew Brees. And what did Drew Brees get? When he had a serviceable defense, bend don't break defense, they won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. This is a building block to the Cincinnati Bengals to say, hey, we need to build some sort of serviceable defense around this dude, and we can do something. This is not the only season Joe Burrow is going to be doing this. This franchise will be fine, but it's up to that front office to figure out how to give him some sort of help.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you look at the injuries on the defensive side of the ball, Dax Hill, DJ Turner. I mean, I thought at one point we were going to lose Jason here to the Cincinnati, but again, going back as a pro player, you probably have to take a pay cut. So,
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, so, but when you look at the fact that they've had the fewest sacks in the NFL, they're 29th in defensive efficiency, I think Joe Burrow's had a great year. It's a little bit of like where Detroit is right now. They just had to outscore opponents each and every week, and I would not take that against Joe Burrow.
I asked the question, do we consider Joe Burrow elite? Because I don't know any other current elite quarterbacks where we'd be accepting of them not making the playoffs. Joe Burrow, his individual season is clearly not a disappointment. The guy's been awesome. But I look at Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and let's leave Mahomes to the side because he's one of one. Those two guys, at this point in their career, if they played a full season and had these numbers, we wouldn't be critical of them not making the playoffs, regardless of the reason why.
I think it would be, you think about earlier in this season, we looked at that Baltimore Ravens defense when they played against the Cincinnati Bengals, and the score was 105-100 because neither team could stop the other one. And we were talking about the type of year Lamar Jackson was having and saying the only reason this team won't win a Super Bowl is because of how the defense was playing. When you ask that question, if Lamar was in the same situation as Joe Burrow and that Ravens defense had been playing the same way they had been, I would say, yes, I would give him a mulligan in a sense because of that. Now, their defense has turned it around, so now the conversation is completely different. But their defense has been so bad. The games that they've lost, playing against the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels, throwing that last pass to Terry McLaurin, and they end up losing that game. And to your point, they've had injuries, but even before the injuries, they couldn't stop anybody. It shouldn't have taken a Mike Gesicki forced fumble by the New England Patriots, Kyle Duggar, for them to lose that game. We look at this New England Patriots team and what they've become. They have the first pick in the draft. So that, to me, just goes to show that level of their team.
But the inverse of that, though, Jason, is you go back to that Kansas City game, it's 4th and 19, And if they don't get that penalty, we're talking about the Bengals being the best team in football. So I don't think they're far away either. I think the key is they got to keep Trey Hendrickson, who's right now leading the league in sacks, and they just got to pour additional resources into that defense, which is going to be difficult because I'm sure Joe Burrow is going to walk into the Bengals front office, knock on the door and say, T. Higgins is going nowhere, fellas.
But that's a mistake, and that's a knock on him, David. Because if you want help on defense, you have to let one of the wide receivers go.
Why Philadelphia has shown, Miami has shown that you can have two good receivers, Evan, and still have a good team around them.
Miami's the example who are not going to make the playoffs, most likely, David?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow is not above reproach for the way that he started this season. Remember, we were all watching film of him drinking a bottle of water thinking that something was really wrong with his hand. That's how slow that he started in this season. But, I mean, since then, though, look at this game against Denver. Everybody else on that team tried to lose the game about 5 different times, and Joe Burrow had to figure out a way to win. I think if you're rational, you look at somebody like Lamar Jackson, you look at somebody like Josh Allen in that situation, and you say, hey, they can't overcome that sort of defense and that sort of ineptitude, on the other side of the field. But he did enough. I mean, these are some all-time stats he's putting together.
I love the fact that you brought up the fact of, is he elite? And you just mentioned of re-signing T. Higgins. And part of being elite, you look at Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill walks out of the door and he finds a way to continue to win. We're looking at a defense. They signed Geno Stone. They brought Von Bell back, and they haven't been able in the secondary to cover enough guys. Mike Hilton is a guy that's one of the best blitzing nickels, but there's been moments where they've taken him off the field on third down. To your point, I think a big question mark for next year, if T. Higgins does leave, because T. Higgins can be a number one receiver for somebody else. Can Joe Burrow still have the same level of success? Because we saw when T. Higgins wasn't healthy earlier in this season, when we're talking about them not playing up to par, he wasn't out there. And you do, I think, let him walk in the sense of if it helps you upgrade your defense and get more guys out there that can stop somebody offensively.
I know we're contractually not allowed to say anything negative about Patrick Mahomes, but hypothetically, if we were, I would say that since Tyreek Hill's left, this team has been as good defensively, Kansas City, as they have been on offense, and that's one of the many reasons they're champions, taking nothing away from Mahomes. My point is this, the object of the exercise when you run a team is to collect productive, high-character, durable players. And, T, you're going nowhere. Now, we got, again, I would draft a lot on defense because I agree with that, but to me, the Higgins thing, look, and Philadelphia's a good example, Evan. They have 2 great receivers, and obviously they drafted young and very productively on defense in terms of those young Georgia guys have gotten better.
Absolutely. I guess the overall point is I look at it as a compliment if you say about Joe Burrow that this season, not for him individually, is a failure because I'm looking at him the way that I would look at Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Or Brady and Manning or Breeze, as you mentioned, when you were in Louisiana watching them. Like, when you have that kind of level of quarterback, the expectation is if you have 42 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, you should be in the playoffs. Simple as that.
That's an indictment of everybody else, though. I mean, that is a as you mentioned at the very beginning, a wasted season, and that is about the front office keeping T. Higgins and figuring out a way to draft around him and get some good defense in there. That's your job. That is literally the job description to have, to keep the good players that you have and build around them. And this is about the Cincinnati Bengals. If this happens again, couple more teams, a couple more years, and you look at Joe Burrow and you say, have we wasted this dude's prime by not getting the right stars around him? Then the Cincinnati Bengals as an organization will have to look at themselves in the mirror for a really long time.
And I think the hardest thing is going to be for Joe Burrow right now, moving forward, to not actually advocate for his guys. Because if you want Higgins and Chase back for many years to come, I understand the Philly example. There are more examples the other way than there are of that, at least currently, in the NFL.